The moment I heard about my brother's death was the moment my world turned blood red with vengeance. He had been caught stealing drugs from the Bloods, a fatal mistake in the merciless economy of prison life. The news reached me like a cold hand squeezing my heart, and from that instant, my purpose was reshaped by a singular burning desire: revenge. Life in prison is a delicate balance of power, alliances, and survival. Up until my brother's death, I had navigated these treacherous waters with cautious diplomacy, keeping my head down and staying out of gang conflicts. But the murder of my brother obliterated any semblance of neutrality I had maintained. The Bloods had taken something irreplaceable from me, and for that, they would pay. I started laying my plans with meticulous care, knowing full well the risks involved. Retribution against a gang like the Bloods was tantamount to a death wish, but the fire of vengeance that burned in me left no room for fear. I spent weeks observing, plotting, and planning. I made covert alliances, traded favors for information, until I tracked down 2 of the men responsible for my brother's death, and then I prepared for the moment I would strike. The night I chose for my act of vengeance was cloaked in darkness, both literal and metaphorical. I had managed to procure a shank, its crude metal surface cold and unforgiving in my hand. My heart pounded against my ribcage, not in fear but in anticipation. I found my targets in a secluded part of the yard, the very men who had boasted of killing my brother. The night air was thick with tension as I approached, every sense heightened, every instinct screaming. The confrontation was brief and brutal. I lunged out of the shadows, driven by a rage that had consumed my every waking moment. The surprise on their faces was fleeting, my path replaced by the grim determination of survival. They fought back, of course, but I had the element of surprise, and a rage that lent me a reckless strength. Slit. 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 My blade slicing right through their flesh, I stab one, and then quickly stab the other, giving no time to recover. A few pokes to the gut, and then I continue to stab them until I go for the killing blow and sever their jugulars. It's done. Vengeance was mine. But revenge is a double-edged sword, and in my blind pursuit of it, I had failed to consider the consequences of such a brazen attack. The Bloods were many, and their retribution was swift and merciless. As I stood over the bodies of my enemies, my moment of triumph was shattered by the cold realization of what I had done. I had not just killed 2 men, I had declared war on the entire gang. The retaliation was immediate. As I left the scene, my next goal was to clean up and catch up to a guard and get moved to segregation before the other members could figure out what I've done. Before I could escape, I was surrounded. The bloody trail I left behind had given me away. There was no grand speech, no questions asked, just the swift, brutal justice of the gang world. As the first blow landed, many more shortly followed by the searing pain of a shank piercing my flesh. But I was not one to go down easy. They were going to work for it as I regained my bearings. I gripped my knife and plunged it forward, striking anything in my path. Slit. 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 Puncture after puncture. My blade finds multiple targets. Slice to the face, a few slashes to the throats. I gave it everything I had until there was just no more. Their numbers were too vast. It was then I realized the true cost of my quest for vengeance. My vision blurred, filled with the sight of my attackers and the overwhelming sensation of my lifeblood draining away. In those final moments, as I lay on the cold ground of the prison yard, I thought of my brother. I wondered if he would understand why I had done what I had, if he would have done the same for me. A part of me hoped he would have chosen a different path, one that didn't end in bloodshed and darkness. As the light dimmed and my consciousness faded, I understood the tragic irony of my quest for vengeance. In seeking justice for my brother's death, I had only perpetuated the cycle of violence that had claimed his life. My last breath was a whisper of regret, a silent apology to my brother for not living the life he would have wanted for me, one of peace, not of revenge. My death isn't the worst part of the story. The prison made a call to my mother as she was set to visit that next day. The sergeant personally delivered the news to her. She was silent for a moment, and she cried, "No, no, 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 not again." The pain she felt was unspeakable, being that she had lost a second child due to the harsh environment of prison life, a pain that still haunts us from beyond the grave.
follow for more spine-tingling content. Drop a like to show your fear-loving spirit, and share the frights with friends.